Some betrayals don't creep in quietly. They don't whisper in the shadows or leave you guessing. They explode right in the middle of your living room, in broad daylight, while everyone else just shrugs and pretends it's no big deal. For me, that moment came the day my younger sister decided to smash my brand new phone like it was nothing more than a toy. My name is Natalie Brooks, and I'm 27 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington, and I work as a full-time graphic designer. On the surface, I'm just like any other young professional, commuting to the office, taking on freelance gigs on the side, saving a little every month. But what nobody saw, what I kept hidden, was that I had also been quietly carrying the weight of my family on my shoulders for years. My parents, Linda and Charles Brooks, aren't cruel people. But when it comes to my younger sister Olivia, they lose all sense of balance. Olivia is 24, still in college, still the so-called baby of the family. To them, she can do no wrong. She is golden, special, delicate. Me? I've always been the reliable one, the daughter who gets things done, who never complains, who makes the grown-up choices. That reliability became a curse. While Olivia drifted through her classes and partied on weekends, I was quietly paying for her tuition. While my parents praised her potential, I was covering most of the bills to keep our household afloat. And I never said a word about it. I thought I was being noble. I thought sacrifice was what family meant. But that illusion shattered the moment Olivia picked up my brand new smartphone. It was a Saturday afternoon, one of those rare sunny days in Seattle, when the sky actually turns blue instead of gray. I had just come back from the Apple store downtown, finally buying myself a reward for months of late nights and endless deadlines: the latest smartphone. Sleek, powerful, something that felt like proof my hard work was paying off. I set it down on the coffee table to charge and went into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. When I came back, Olivia was lounging on the couch, scrolling through my photos without even asking. "Hey," I said sharply, reaching for it. "Put that down." She looked up at me with that smirk she'd perfected since childhood, the one that said she knew she could get away with anything. "You think you're better than everyone else now?" she sneered. "Just because you can buy expensive toys?" Before I could respond, she stood up, walked toward the balcony, and in one smooth motion, tossed the phone over the railing. The sound of it hitting the concrete 2 stories below was like a gunshot to my chest. My breath caught as I bolted downstairs, praying it wasn't as bad as it sounded. But when I picked it up, the screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, the back dented, the device completely dead. My reward for years of work, destroyed in seconds out of pure spite. My hands shook as I stormed back upstairs. "You're going to pay for that!" I snapped, my voice trembling with fury. Olivia just shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "It was an accident," she said, her tone dripping with fake innocence. An accident. She had walked deliberately to the balcony. She had looked me in the eye before she let it fall. This wasn't clumsiness. It was jealousy. I turned to my parents, desperate for them to finally step in and hold her accountable. "Did you see what she just did?" I demanded. "She destroyed my phone!" My mom sighed as if I were the one making trouble. "Natalie, it's just a phone," she said calmly. "Don't make a big deal out of it." My dad nodded in agreement, his eyes still on the television. "You can afford another one, can't you?" I stared at them, my chest tight. The silence that followed wasn't just about a broken device. It was years of dismissal crashing down at once, years of being the one who gave everything, only to be brushed aside the second I asked for fairness. Olivia smirked again, victorious, as if she had won some invisible game. And in a way, she had, because my parents defended her, like they always did. I went to bed that night, not just angry, but hollow. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the sound of the phone shattering on the concrete. Not because of the money, it wasn't about that. It was about what it represented. That phone was a symbol, a reminder that no matter how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed, I would always be seen as less important than her comfort. My accomplishments were invisible, my needs were negotiable, and my pain? It was an inconvenience to be dismissed. What my family didn't know was that, for years, I had been quietly paying the price for all of them: rent, utilities, internet bills, groceries. Every month, money from my paycheck went toward keeping the house running smoothly. On top of that, I had been covering Olivia's college tuition, because she just needs a little support right now, as my parents always said. But that night, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just angry about a broken phone. I was done being the silent provider, the invisible wallet they all leaned on. I realized in that moment that I wasn't respected. I was used. And the only way they would ever learn what I'd been carrying was if I let it all crash down around them. So I made a decision. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't even warn them. I would simply stop. No more tuition payments. No more bill money. No more covering for Olivia's recklessness or my parents' blind favoritism. If they thought a smashed phone was just a minor inconvenience, then they were about to find out what happens when the person they treated like a disposable safety net finally decides to walk away. At the time, I didn't know just how deep Olivia's betrayal really went. I didn't know that behind her smirk, she was already scheming in ways that would cut deeper than any broken phone ever could. But I was about to find out. And when I did, it wouldn't just change the way I saw my family. It would change everything. The morning after the phone incident, I sat at the little desk in my bedroom with my old backup phone lying uselessly beside me. My laptop screen glowed with the same 2 tabs it had opened every month for the past 2 years. One for the household bills, and one for Olivia's college tuition. It was automatic by now, like brushing my teeth or clocking in at work. Every month, without fail, I'd send money to keep our house running and to keep Olivia enrolled in classes. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries, they all quietly came out of my account. And Olivia's tuition. That was another $2,200 I sent every single month, while she acted like education was just a side hobby between parties. But that morning, something in me shifted. My cursor hovered over the Pay Now button, and for the first time, I didn't click. I closed the tabs. My heart was racing, not from fear, but from the rush of finally doing something for myself. If my parents thought I was making a big deal out of a phone, fine. Let's see how they handled life when the invisible daughter stopped funding their comfort. I didn't say a word to anyone. No warnings, no hints, no dramatic speeches, just silence. At first, nothing seemed to change. Olivia strutted around the house in her designer sneakers, bragging on Instagram about brunch with friends. My mom made coffee like she always did, humming as if our lives were picture perfect. Dad read the paper in his usual corner chair, but by the end of the week, the cracks began to show. The internet went down for the first time in years. I listened from the kitchen as Mom called the service provider, her voice sharp, blaming them for a mistake. But I knew better. 2 days later, Dad came into the kitchen holding a letter with a red stamp across the top. Past due. The electric company was charging a late fee. He set the envelope down on the counter with a sigh, rubbing his forehead. At dinner that night, Olivia slammed her laptop shut and stomped into the kitchen. "Why can't I register for classes?" she demanded. "They're saying my tuition hasn't been paid." I took a slow sip of water, hiding my smirk. "Weird. Must be a mistake," I said casually. She glared at me, probably waiting for me to offer a solution. But instead of jumping in to fix it like I always did, I simply stood up, placed my dish in the sink, and walked to my room. Her frustration echoed through the house, but I didn't flinch. By the end of the second week, the tension was unbearable. My mom stopped talking to me, except for the occasional sharp glare. Dad muttered vague speeches about responsibility and family loyalty during dinner, though he never said my name. Olivia stomped around like a queen deprived of her throne, slamming doors and blasting music. But underneath the chaos, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying their world on my shoulders. I didn't have to race to cover bills or skip buying myself something because Olivia needed new textbooks she'd never open. Instead, I started redirecting my money. I set up a savings account just for myself. I signed up for a professional design course online to sharpen my skills. I even treated myself to a weekend trip to Portland with a friend, something I never would have done before because I'd always worried about keeping the lights on back home. It felt strange at first, almost guilty, but then freeing. I realized how much I had sacrificed without ever being acknowledged. While Olivia got praised for every minor achievement, my steady support had been invisible. One evening, I came home late after grabbing dinner with a coworker. I walked into the house to find the living room dark, my parents arguing in hushed tones. Olivia was curled on the couch, pouting with her arms crossed. "She needs to step up," Mom hissed. "We can't keep covering this." "She's being selfish," Dad agreed, "after everything we've done for her." My foot froze on the stair. Everything they've done for me? My throat tightened. Did they really believe that? I went upstairs without a word, my chest burning. For years, I had been pouring money, energy, and time into keeping this family afloat, and yet in their eyes, I was the selfish one. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the glow from my laptop casting shadows across the room. For the first time, I wondered if it wasn't just about bills or tuition. Maybe there was something bigger happening behind the scenes, something I hadn't uncovered yet. The thought lingered in my mind the next few days, like a storm cloud on the horizon. I noticed little things I had ignored before. Olivia hiding envelopes in her room, my mom making whispered phone calls in the kitchen late at night, my dad's sudden interest in the mail that arrived each morning. One Thursday evening, a week before Olivia's tuition deadline, the truth started to unravel. I was sitting in a cafe downtown, enjoying a quiet moment after work, when my old backup phone buzzed. It was an email from the bank. Subject: loan account activity. I frowned. I didn't have any loans. When I opened it, my heart dropped. The email thanked me for updating contact details on a student loan account. The amount? Over $18,000. My hands shook as I dialed the bank's fraud department. A woman on the line confirmed my worst fear. There were 3 student loans in my name, all linked to my social security number. The most recent had been taken out just 2 months ago. "Do you have a sister named Olivia Brooks?" the rep asked carefully. My stomach twisted. "Yes." "Well," she continued, "her name is listed as the beneficiary for all 3 loans." The rest of her words blurred. I could only hear the thundering of my heartbeat in my ears. Olivia hadn't just been freeloading off me. She had been stealing my identity, digging me into debt behind my back. I sat frozen in that cafe, staring at my untouched coffee, my mind spiraling. This wasn't about a broken phone. This wasn't about favoritism or bills. This was fraud, a crime. My own sister had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. That night, when I got home, the house looked normal. Mom was cooking dinner. Dad was watching TV. Olivia was upstairs blasting music like always. But I saw it all differently now. They weren't just blind to her behavior. They were complicit in letting her destroy me. I knew then that I couldn't just walk away quietly. If I wanted my life back, I would need proof. I would need to plan. And when the time came, I wouldn't just stop supporting them. I would expose everything they had tried to hide. So I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it in bold letters, "The Truth." Every bill I had paid, every bank statement, every tuition receipt, every screenshot went in. And now, the student loan documents too. Piece by piece, I built my case like armor. Olivia thought smashing my phone was a victory. She thought cutting me down would keep me under her thumb. But what she didn't know was that she had just handed me the first thread of a web I was about to unravel completely. And when I finally pulled it, their entire world would come crashing down. The week after I discovered the student loans in my name felt like walking on a tightrope above a fire. I went about my daily life as if nothing had changed, but every glance at Olivia or my parents carried a weight I couldn't put into words. I didn't confront them right away. Explosions satisfy for a moment, but evidence, that lasts. So I kept gathering. Bank statements, signed documents, emails confirming account updates. Every piece of paper became another weapon in my growing arsenal. At home, the tension had shifted in subtle ways. My mom had started avoiding eye contact with me altogether. My dad made pointed comments about family sacrifice at dinner. And Olivia was acting bolder than ever. She strutted into the living room one night in a new outfit, price tag still hanging off the sleeve. She twirled for my mom, who clapped her hands like a proud stage mother. "Doesn't she look stunning?" Mom beamed. I raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. I thought money was tight." Olivia smirked. "Don't worry about it. I always figure things out." The smirk made my stomach churn. Now I knew exactly how she was figuring things out. With my credit, my name, my future. That night, as I sat at my desk staring at the folder labeled "The Truth," I made myself a promise. When the time came, I wouldn't just reveal Olivia's lies. I'd do it in a way no one could deny. 2 days later, the storm clouds finally cracked open. It was Sunday afternoon. My dad called me into the dining room, his voice unnervingly sweet. "Emily, can you sit down? We need to talk." The table was set like it was a holiday. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables neatly arranged on serving plates. My mom sat across from Olivia, who was scrolling on her phone, nails tapping against the screen. I sat slowly, my pulse steady but sharp, like a drumbeat before battle. "We've been patient," Dad began, folding his hands in front of him. "But enough is enough. Your sister's tuition is overdue. Bills are piling up. It's time for you to stop playing games and help this family again." I let out a dry laugh. "Playing games? That's what you think I've been doing?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. Just admit you're being selfish and pay what you're supposed to." "Supposed to?" I repeated, tilting my head. "Funny, because I don't remember signing a contract saying I'd bankroll your entire life." "Emily," my mom snapped, her voice sharp. "We didn't raise you to be cruel. You have a good job. It's your duty to support your sister until she graduates. She deserves this chance." "Deserves?" My voice rose, steady but firm. "Do you even realize who's been keeping this house together for the past 2 years? Every electric bill, every grocery trip, every tuition payment." Silence. My mom's lips pressed into a thin line. My dad shifted uncomfortably. Olivia just smirked, like she knew something I didn't. That was when I slid the manila envelope out of my bag and set it in the middle of the table. "Since you all seem to have selective memory, let me refresh it." I pulled out receipts, electric bills with my name on them, tuition invoices stamped "paid," grocery orders charged to my account, page after page. "This," I said, tapping the stack, "is proof that I've carried this family financially for 2 years. And instead of gratitude, I get insults. Instead of respect, I get my phone smashed. And instead of honesty," I pulled out the final set of papers, the loan documents, "I get my identity stolen." Olivia's smirk faltered. Her hand froze mid-scroll. "What is this?" my dad demanded, snatching one of the pages. 3 student loans," I said coldly. "Over $18,000, all taken out under my name, with Olivia listed as the beneficiary." My mom's face drained of color. "That's not possible." "Oh, it's very possible," I said, sliding the signed forms across the table. My social security number printed at the bottom. Bank confirmation stamps in the corner. "The bank verified everything. And before you try to spin this, yes, I've already filed a police report." The silence that followed was suffocating. Olivia's chair scraped back as she stood, her voice trembling. "It wasn't... You don't understand. I was going to pay it back." "Don't bother." I cut her off. "You forged my name. You stole from me. That's not a mistake. That's a crime." My dad's jaw clenched, his voice sharp. "Emily, she's your sister. You can't drag her through the mud like this." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. She ruined her own reputation the moment she decided my future was hers to steal, and I'm done protecting her. Olivia's tears fell fast, but they weren't the tears of guilt. They were the tears of someone caught in the act. She looked at my mom desperately. "Do something!" she cried. But my mom was speechless, her hands trembling in her lap. For once, she had no defense. I stood, gathering my folder. "You all made your choice when you treated me like nothing more than a wallet. You sided with her when she destroyed my phone. You looked away when she lived off my sacrifices, but you won't be able to look away from this." I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked out, my heels clicking against the tile. Behind me, the sound of Olivia's sobs filled the air, tangled with my parents' stunned silence. The next morning, the fallout began. I was at my favorite coffee shop downtown, working remotely, when my backup phone buzzed. A notification from the neighborhood group chat. Police cars outside the Brooks house. I froze. My heart pounded as I opened the thread. Neighbors had posted photos, 2 patrol cars parked in front of our house, flashing red and blue lights splashing against the siding. I didn't need to guess why. I packed up my laptop and drove back, parking across the street. A crowd of neighbors had gathered, whispering behind cupped hands. Through the open doorway, I saw Officer Hernandez leading Olivia down the steps in handcuffs. Her hair was a mess, her face pale, her eyes darting from side to side. My mom trailed behind, shouting about misunderstandings. My dad kept his head low, shame etched across his face. Charges: identity theft, fraud, unlawful use of personal information, Officer Hernandez announced clearly for the record, and for the neighbors who were listening. Olivia spotted me across the street. Her voice cracked. "Emily, tell them it's a mistake. Please." I crossed my arms, leaning against my car. My voice was calm, steady. "Not my problem anymore, Olivia." Officer Hernandez glanced at me, gave the smallest nod, then guided her into the back of the patrol car. As the vehicles pulled away, my mom stormed toward me, fury in her eyes. "You've ruined her life!" "No," I said quietly, locking my car door. "She ruined her own life. I just stopped shielding her from the consequences." For a moment, she opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but no words came. She stood frozen on the sidewalk as I got into my car and drove away. And as I pulled onto the main road, I knew this was just the beginning. The mask my family had worn for years was crumbling, piece by piece, and I was finally free to live without being their safety net. The morning after Olivia's arrest, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. When I stopped at the corner cafe near my office, people whispered as soon as I walked in. Normally, I would have shrunk under the weight of their stares, but not that day. I held my head high, ordered my coffee, and sat by the window like I owned the sunlight streaming in. It wasn't just neighbors. By noon, whispers had turned into full-blown rumors. A coworker leaned over during lunch and asked, "Hey, Emily, is it true? Your sister got taken in for fraud?" I didn't flinch. "Yes," I said simply. "Identity theft, in my name." The table went silent. No one had expected me to answer so bluntly, but I wasn't hiding anymore. Meanwhile, back at the Brooks house, my parents were drowning. Bills piled higher without my invisible hand paying them. Olivia's university expelled her within 24 hours of her arrest. The dean's office issued a formal notice: financial misconduct, immediate termination of enrollment. I didn't find out from them. I found out from one of Olivia's old classmates who DM'd me on Instagram. "Hey, sorry about your sister. Word is, she's out. Everyone knows why." The so-called golden child's empire was crumbling in real time. Still, my parents doubled down. That week, my dad left me a voicemail, his voice gravelly with anger. "You should be ashamed. Family doesn't betray family. You had no right to take this outside. We could have handled it." Handled it? I replayed those words, fury bubbling in my chest. They hadn't handled anything for years. I had been the one handling it all, silently, tirelessly, while they looked the other way. But now, the spotlight was on them, and they had nowhere to hide. One evening, my Aunt Diane invited me over for dinner. She had always been the one relative who noticed the little things, like how I never bought new clothes even though I had a full-time job, or how Olivia always seemed to show up with the latest gadgets. As we sat at her kitchen table, she poured me tea and said softly, "Emily, I've known for a while something wasn't right, but I didn't realize it was this bad. You've been carrying everything, haven't you?" For the first time in years, I let myself be honest. I told her about the bills, the tuition payments, the groceries, the late nights when I worked extra hours just to keep the lights on. And I told her about the loans, the betrayal that cut deeper than anything else. Her hands trembled as she set her cup down. "Your parents let this happen?" "They didn't just let it happen," I said bitterly. "They encouraged it. Maybe not the loans, but everything else. They built Olivia up while they used me like a wallet." Aunt Diane shook her head, eyes wet with anger and sadness. "They've failed you, but you don't have to carry their shame anymore." Those words stuck with me. For the first time, I realized she was right. Their shame wasn't mine to hold. The next Sunday, there was a family gathering at my uncle's house. I hadn't planned to go, but Aunt Diane insisted. "It's time everyone knew the truth," she said. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. My mom's eyes narrowed, my dad's jaw tightened, and Olivia, out on bail for now, sat in the corner with her arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the villain. Halfway through dinner, Aunt Diane cleared her throat. "I think it's time we talked about what's been happening with Emily." My mom shot her a warning look. "This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," Diane interrupted firmly. She pulled out a folder and set it on the table. My folder. The one labeled "The Truth." I froze. I hadn't given it to her. But then I remembered. I had shown her some documents at her house, and she must have made copies. Diane opened the folder, sliding the papers across the table one by one. Utility bills in my name, tuition receipts with my card information, and finally, the loan documents, stamped and signed, with Olivia listed as the beneficiary. Gasps filled the room. One of my uncles slammed his hand on the table. "So all this time, Emily was the one keeping your household afloat, and you let us believe Olivia was the responsible one?" My mom stammered, her voice high and frantic. "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. Another aunt shook her head, disgust clear in her eyes. "Margaret, we trusted you. We thought you raised two daughters with respect for each other. Instead, you let one steal from the other." Olivia's cheeks flushed red. "I didn't. It's not—" I cut her off, my voice calm but sharp. "Don't bother lying. The bank confirmed it, and the police already have the case." The room buzzed with disbelief and anger, but for the first time, none of it was directed at me. It was all aimed at them, my parents, who had covered for Olivia, and Olivia herself, who had burned every bridge with her greed. I sat quietly, watching as the golden image they had built shattered piece by piece. By the end of the evening, relatives who had once idolized Olivia now avoided her gaze. Some openly shook their heads in disgust. My mom sat pale and silent, my dad stared at the floor, and Olivia's eyes burned with hate. But me? For the first time in years, I felt light. The truth was no longer mine alone to carry. It was out there, undeniable, unchangeable. That night, when I got home, I stood in my room staring at the folder on my desk. The papers that had once felt like a weight now felt like wings. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." Because now, not only did I have proof, I had witnesses. And the family that once ignored my sacrifices would never look at me the same way again. The truth wasn't just spreading, it was rewriting everything. The weeks leading up to Olivia's trial felt like living in a pressure cooker. The story had already spread across Portland. At the grocery store, I'd hear whispers trail behind me. At work, coworkers stopped pretending not to know. Everywhere I went, people already had an opinion about the Brooks sisters. For once, I wasn't hiding. The day of the hearing arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. The courthouse loomed in front of me, tall and intimidating, its stone steps slick with rain. I clutched my folder of evidence, the one I had built piece by piece, tighter than ever. When I walked into the courtroom, my stomach flipped. Olivia sat at the defendant's table, her once perfect hair limp, her makeup streaked as if she hadn't slept. She fidgeted constantly, twisting her hands in her lap. Beside her sat a public defender who looked too tired to care. Behind them, my parents. Margaret's lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting anywhere but toward me. David kept his gaze low, pretending to study the floor, but his clenched jaw gave him away. I took my seat near the prosecutor's table, my folder placed neatly in front of me. For the first time, I didn't feel small. The judge entered, stern and brisk. "Court is now in session." The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Reynolds, began laying out the case. She pulled no punches. "Your Honor, this is not a family disagreement. This is fraud." The defendant, Olivia Brooks, stole her sister Emily Brooks's personal information and used it to take out multiple student loans, totaling over $18,000. She forged signatures, changed contact details, and knowingly benefited from the theft. Her voice echoed across the room. Olivia squirmed in her chair. When it was my turn to testify, I stood, my hands trembling just slightly as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. Ms. Reynolds guided me through the questions. "Emily, can you tell the court what your role in your household has been these last few years?" I took a deep breath. "I've been the silent provider. I paid the bills, rent, utilities, groceries. I covered my sister's tuition every month. For years, I kept my family afloat without recognition." "And when did you discover something was wrong?" I described the email at the cafe, the heart-stopping moment when I learned loans existed in my name. I held up the printed emails, the signed documents, each one stamped with the bank's verification. "This is your social security number?" Ms. Reynolds asked, pointing to the paper. "Yes," I said firmly. "But I never applied for those loans. Olivia did. She used my information." I glanced at my sister then. For once, she couldn't smirk. Her eyes were glassy, darting to her lawyer, then back to the table. The defense tried their best. Her attorney painted Olivia as a young, overwhelmed student under pressure to succeed. He claimed it was a moment of desperation and that she intended to pay it back. But when the judge asked, "Did you forge your sister's name?" Olivia's silence spoke louder than any excuse. The evidence was stacked too high to ignore. When it was my turn to speak directly, I looked the judge square in the eye. My voice didn't waver. I loved my family enough to sacrifice everything. I gave up vacations, dinners, clothes, and my own dreams to make sure my sister had opportunities. And instead of gratitude, she stole from me. This isn't just money. It's betrayal. It's theft of years of my life, and I can't let that go. The courtroom was silent. Even my parents didn't move. The judge's ruling came down like a hammer. "Olivia Brooks, you are guilty of identity theft, fraud, and unlawful use of personal information. You are sentenced to 1 year in county jail. You are ordered to repay $18,000 in loans to the bank, as well as $12,000 in damages to Emily Brooks for emotional distress and loss of financial security." Olivia gasped. My mom cried out, "No!" My dad dropped his head into his hands. I just sat there, my heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in years: justice. As the bailiff led Olivia away in handcuffs, she looked over her shoulder at me. Her face was streaked with tears, her voice breaking. "Emily, please, don't let them do this. I met her eyes, steady. You did this to yourself. When I left the courthouse, the rain had cleared. The air felt sharp, clean. For the first time in so long, I could breathe without the weight of everyone else's expectations pressing down on me. I thought about the $12,000 in damages I'd receive, about how I could finally invest in myself instead of carrying others. But more than the money, it was the freedom that mattered. As I walked down the courthouse steps, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass door. Not the invisible provider anymore, not the scapegoat, not the forgotten sister, just Emily Brooks, independent, free. And though my family's world was falling apart, I knew mine was only just beginning. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 in the comments. Every one reminds us that these stories matter, and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. The morning after the trial, I woke up in my small bedroom with sunlight pouring through the blinds. For the first time in years, I didn't feel dread weighing me down. No bills to calculate in my head before coffee. No frantic thoughts about how to cover Olivia's tuition before the deadline. The verdict had changed everything. I made myself a simple breakfast, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. The settlement money, $12,000 in damages plus repayment of the loans, hadn't arrived yet, but just knowing it was coming felt like a door swinging wide open. For years, I had poured myself into keeping my family afloat. Now I could finally pour that same energy into myself. The first step? I found a small office space downtown Portland, just a short walk from Pioneer Courthouse Square. It was nothing fancy. Bare white walls, old carpeting, and a desk that wobbled slightly when I leaned on it. But it was mine. I signed the lease that week. I called it Brooks Creative Studio, a design business I had dreamed about for years but never thought possible. I painted the walls a soft teal myself, filled the shelves with books on design and business, and hung a corkboard where I pinned ideas for future projects. At first, clients came slowly. A local coffee shop needed a new logo. A small yoga studio wanted flyers. But one project led to another, and soon, word of mouth carried my name farther than I expected. Every invoice I sent out felt like a personal victory. This money wasn't being funneled into someone else's tuition or someone else's lifestyle. It was mine, earned with my skill, my creativity, my time. Meanwhile, life back at my parents' house grew darker. Without me paying bills, they were struggling. Aunt Diane told me the lights had been shut off twice. The yard was overgrown, and Margaret had been spotted arguing with the landlord in the driveway. Olivia's world had collapsed even faster. Jail stripped her of her fake friends, her phone, her curated image. She was expelled from her university, and when she eventually got out, she'd carry a criminal record that no internship or job application could erase. I didn't feel joy in their downfall. What I felt was distance. Their chaos was no longer mine to fix. Instead, I focused on my own growth. I signed up for a professional design course in San Francisco, an online program that connected me with mentors from the Bay Area tech scene. For the first time, I had a network outside Portland, and the connections were electric. One mentor, a woman named Rachel, told me, "Emily, your portfolio is strong. You could scale this into something much bigger." Her words lit a fire in me. I stopped thinking of myself as a girl patching holes for her family. I started seeing myself as a businesswoman. One night, as I was leaving my office, I bumped into a cafe owner across the street. He had noticed my work and asked if I could redesign his menus and signage. I said yes. That project turned into a partnership. He recommended me to other small businesses in Portland, and suddenly, my inbox was full. Within 3 months, I had so many clients that I hired a part-time assistant, a college student named Hannah who reminded me of myself at that age, eager, hardworking, hungry to prove herself. Together, we turned the little teal-walled office into a hub of creativity. And in the quiet evenings, when the city lights flickered outside my window, I allowed myself something I had denied for years: joy. I decorated my apartment with plants and string lights. I bought a bicycle and rode along the Willamette River after work. I tried new restaurants with friends, laughed over cocktails, and finally lived the life I had once thought was out of reach. But the most surprising part? People started reaching out. Strangers on social media messaged me after I shared snippets of my journey. They wrote, "Your story gave me courage to set boundaries with my toxic family." Or, "I finally said no to being treated like a wallet after reading about you." Each message reminded me that what had felt like shame for so long was now strength. Back in the Brooks house, my parents kept trying to call. Margaret left voicemails laced with guilt. "Emily, we're family. You can't just abandon us." David sent short texts. "We need to talk. It's urgent." I didn't respond. They had abandoned me years ago when they chose Olivia's comfort over my sacrifices. I wasn't about to walk back into the same trap. Instead, I poured everything into Brooks' creative studio. By the 6-month mark, I had signed contracts with 2 mid-sized companies in Portland. My income doubled. I looked at my bank account and realized something. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I was thriving. One Saturday afternoon, I wandered into the same electronics store where Olivia had smashed my brand new phone months before. I walked past the rows of glittering devices, my chest tightening with the memory of her smirk, the sound of the phone hitting the concrete. But this time, the heaviness didn't follow. I picked up the latest model, sleek and shining in my hand. When the cashier rang it up, she smiled. "Treating yourself?" I smiled back. Finally. That night, I placed the phone on my desk next to my business license. I took a photo and posted it to my studio's Instagram page with the caption, "She smashed my phone. I built a life she can never touch." The post went viral overnight. Thousands of likes, comments flooding in from people who had been in similar situations. "This gave me chills," one wrote. "I needed to read this today," another said. For once, my story wasn't about shame or sacrifice. It was about resilience. As I scrolled through the comments, I felt something settle in my chest. I was no longer the invisible daughter, no longer the scapegoat. I was Emily Brooks, business owner, survivor, free woman. And while my family's house crumbled in debt and silence, mine was finally being built from the ground up, brick by brick, dream by dream. It had been nearly 8 months since Olivia was sentenced. By now, I had grown used to the peace of my new life. Quiet mornings in my apartment, afternoons filled with client calls at Brooks' creative studio, and evenings riding my bike along the waterfront. My days felt full but not heavy. So when my phone buzzed one Saturday afternoon with a message from my Aunt Diane, I almost ignored it. "Emily, I think you need to come to the house. Your parents asked for a family meeting. They say it's important." I stared at the text for a long moment. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it. But another part of me, the one that still carried scars from years of silence, knew this was coming. My parents weren't going to let go without one last attempt. I typed back, "Fine, I'll be there at 5. Walking up the cracked driveway of my parents' house later that evening, I barely recognized it. The lawn was overgrown with weeds, paint peeled off the siding, and the once bright porch light was dim. This was the house I had secretly kept afloat for years. Without me, it was crumbling, a mirror of the family inside. When I stepped through the door, Margaret and David were waiting at the dining table. Aunt Diane sat at the far end, arms folded, clearly there as a witness. Olivia wasn't home yet. She wasn't due to be released for another 2 weeks. But her shadow filled the room anyway. "Emily," Margaret said stiffly, gesturing to a chair. "Sit down, we need to talk." I sat, keeping my back straight. "Then talk." David cleared his throat, his tone rehearsed. "Your sister has been through a lot. Jail was punishment enough. When she comes home, she'll need support, financial support, to get back on her feet. We expect you, as her sister, to help." I almost laughed. "You expect me to pay for her again, after everything she did?" Margaret's voice rose. "She's family, Emily. You can't just abandon her. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. No, Mom. She abandoned herself. She forged my name. She stole from me. She destroyed what little trust I had left. And you defended her every step of the way. The room went quiet. Aunt Diane shifted in her chair, but she didn't speak. David's jaw tightened. You don't understand the pressure she's under. The shame. The shame? My voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. Do you know what shame feels like, Dad? It's working double shifts so the lights stay on, and then listening to you praise Olivia for being the smart one. It's paying her tuition while she smirks in my face. It's handing over everything and being told it's not enough. That's shame. Margaret slammed her palm on the table. You've changed, Emily. You're cold. Money has made you selfish. I stood, my chair scraping back. No, Mom. Boundaries made me free. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then Aunt Diane spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. They don't deserve another cent from you, Emily. And you don't owe them an explanation. They dug this hole themselves. Margaret's face flushed. Stay out of this, Diane. But Diane didn't back down. No, I've stayed quiet long enough. I watched you bleed Emily dry while praising Olivia's laziness. I believed your lies until I saw the receipts myself. You've lost the right to call yourself fair parents. The words hung in the air like a gavel coming down. For the first time in years I saw it, the cracks in their armor. Margaret's lips trembled. David's eyes darted toward the floor. They weren't in control anymore. I picked up my bag. This is the last time I'll step foot in this house. When Olivia comes back, she'll face her life without me, just like the two of you. Margaret stood, her hands shaking. If you walk out now, you're no daughter of mine. I met her eyes, calm and steady. Then I guess I never was. I walked out the front door into the cool Portland evening. For once, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was walking toward something. As I got into my car, Aunt Diane followed me outside. She placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Emily. Don't doubt that. I nodded, my throat tight. It doesn't feel good, but it feels right. Driving back toward the city, the lights of downtown Portland glowed on the horizon. For the first time, I wasn't haunted by what I left behind. I was anchored by what I was building. That night, I sat in my apartment with a cup of tea and let the silence wash over me. It was the kind of silence that once terrified me, the kind that made me feel alone. But now, it felt different. It felt like peace. My parents thought they had cornered me into guilt. Instead, they had freed me even more. And when Olivia came home from jail, she would discover the truth. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I was my own future. 2 weeks later, the day finally came. Olivia was released. I knew because Portland is small enough that word travels quickly, especially when drama follows a family like ours. My phone buzzed with a message from an old neighbor. Saw your sister back at the house. She doesn't look the same. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life wasn't mine to reopen, but curiosity has a way of creeping in. That evening, I drove past my parents' house. The place looked even worse than the last time I'd been there. Shutters hanging crooked, the lawn wild, paint flaking from the siding. Olivia stood on the porch with a duffel bag, looking smaller somehow, like jail had drained the arrogance out of her. My parents hovered around her, trying to shield her from the whispers of neighbors walking their dogs. She spotted my car slowing at the corner. For a brief second, our eyes met. Hers were hollow, desperate. She opened her mouth as if to call out, but I pressed the gas and drove on. That part of my life was finished. Back in my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the books for Brooks Creative Studio. My little business had grown into something bigger than I'd dared to dream. Clients came not just from Portland, but from across the country. Small businesses, authors, nonprofits, they all wanted the kind of clean, creative work I'd always loved doing. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret cutting my family off. The answer is no. Pain, yes. Loss, yes. But regret? Never. Because the moment I let go, I discovered who I could be without carrying everyone else's weight. About a month after Olivia came home, I got an email from the university's finance office. They had officially revoked her enrollment, citing financial misconduct and criminal activity. It was the kind of bureaucratic sentence that sounds cold on paper but carries a brutal truth. She had destroyed her future with her own hands. No degree, no job prospects, and a criminal record that would follow her for years. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just sat quietly, letting the reality sink in. She had taken so much from me, but in the end, she had taken even more from herself. Meanwhile, my parents tried once more to reach me. A letter arrived one morning, the envelope smudged with rain. Inside, Margaret's handwriting trembled across the page. "Emily, we need you. Olivia needs you. We can't do this without you." I read it twice. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Because the truth is, they were right. They couldn't do it without me. And that's exactly why they needed to learn how. That weekend, I did something for myself. I booked a trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a city I'd always wanted to see. The art, the desert skies, the vibrant colors. I spent days wandering galleries, sketching ideas for clients, sipping coffee in sunlit courtyards. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next demand, the next guilt trip. I was free. When I came back to Portland, I decided to mark a new beginning. I signed a lease for a larger office space downtown, with enough room for 3 employees. I hired a full-time assistant and a junior designer, both young women just starting their careers. Watching them grow reminded me of myself years ago, before responsibility crushed me. One afternoon, as we painted one wall of the office a bright teal, my assistant laughed. "You know, Emily, you don't just run a studio, you've built a sanctuary." She was right. And it hit me then. Maybe all that pain, all that betrayal had been carving out space for this. For me to create something new, not just for myself, but for others too. The whispers about my family didn't stop, of course. Portland isn't that big. People still mention Olivia in hushed tones, or Margaret and David's downfall. But those stories don't belong to me anymore. They're background noise in a life that finally feels like mine. One evening, nearly a year after everything began, I found myself walking along the Willamette River at sunset. The sky glowed with streaks of pink and gold, and the air smelled faintly of summer rain. I paused on the bridge, watching the water flow steady and sure, and I thought about everything I had survived. My jealous sister had smashed my brand new phone, but what she didn't know was that she had smashed the last thread keeping me tied to a life of silence and sacrifice. She thought she was breaking me. Instead, she set me free. As I stood there, my phone buzzed. A message from a new client in Seattle. Another door opening. Another future waiting. I smiled, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and kept walking. Toward tomorrow. Toward the life I had built, not for anyone else, but for me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of who I was without them. I was proud. I was whole. I was free.